So boys, we have once again been blessed this month when it comes to the Record of Ragnarok manga, a double chapter, 108 and 109. So throughout today's video, I'll be breaking down the insanity that occurred in Record of Ragnarok chapter 109, which features the arrival of Odin to the arena, him right away entering his wild transformation, the fear associated with this version of the Supreme God, and the start of this wild round 12 fight. A lot of stuff to break down, let's get right into it. So as I left off in the previous video, we had Kintoki looking up in the sky as Odin begins to fly down, wielding these wings as many people begin praying for him, mostly gods, alongside going over the many names Odin is recognized as. Wild stuff, looks very godlike, potentially more so than any other throughout the entire series low-key, but we see upon Odin landing that the wings were actually his two birds we've seen throughout the series. It looked somewhat strange from various other perspectives, and then they seem to fly away based on what I can gather, so it seems very likely they won't be playing a role throughout this fight. Just featured in Odin's arrival to the arena, which without a doubt was goated stuff similar to the likes of Kintoki, who had those wild interactions with pretty much all of humanity. Absolute build up for the final Japanese fighter. So if you're a fan of Kintoki or a fan of Japanese mythology, you're definitely loving this introduction. But what happens next is potentially the most unexpected and wild thing in these two chapters. We see Odin's unique eye beginning to go crazy, the one that was destroyed in the flashback when he found the ruin of the original Odin. And then bro just outright, before the fight even begins, enters his transformation, which is this on screen right now. Truly wild, no one really predicted something like this occurring, that's for sure, or Odin's transformation looking like this. I've seen many people compare it to the likes of Aizen from Bleach or this Final Fantasy villain. Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. But bro is ready to absolutely slay humanity and has those watching pretty much freaking out from his presence alone. An insane aura, much more extreme than any other point in the series. Even the likes of Zeus seems to be freaking out. Shiva smiling. Thor very concerned based on his facial expression. This may very well be the strongest god or character we have in the Record of Ragnarok series. And this is just the start of the fight. We see that Odin's weapon is the spear he previously demonstrated in his clash with Beelzebub and Buddha. But we do know he has his sword from the primordial god days alongside the other ruins within his body. So those things could play a part in this fight, and perhaps once Kintoki is able to destroy his current divine weapon, he pulls out that wild sword and the real fight begins, as all the build up in regards to humanity's fighter is around his axe. Even his Valkyrie was just outright enhancing that, but I will be going over all the translations later on in today's video, so make sure you watch to the end. Now when it comes to Kintoki's response to all this insanity going on right now, he begins to activate something within his body or his weapon that has Odin freaking out right away and being very concerned, outright shocked with what Kintoki is doing, likely connecting to what Brunhilde has set up for this fight, why Kintoki is the only one capable of defeating Odin, and why Kintoki was chosen for this task in the Record of Ragnarok story. So let's go over the translations we have for all this stuff now. So we are told in Kintoki's flashback panels when he was a kid that he was regarded as the greatest demon slayer, but now he's time to become the greatest god slayer. Very similar introduction to the likes of Okita Tsuji, but considering all the other build up prior, I think the hype around Kintoki is to a further degree, which may have something to do with the Japanese audience voting him as the third most popular character in the entire series before he had really done anything in the story outside of a few scenes, highlighting how excited the Japanese fandom is for Kintoki and likely the authors as well. But when it comes to this interesting Brunhilde and Zeus scene, as I explained in my previous video, which fully went over Kintoki's interactions with all of humanity, including these goated panels, Zeus is indeed questioning Brunhilde of whether she really thinks she can defeat Odin, the supreme god, confirming that I never picked a fighter thinking they would lose in Ragnarok, and Kintoki was picked as the anti-Odin fighter on the roster, confirming once again that Kintoki was put on the roster to fight Odin and to defeat Odin, and likely is the only one capable of doing so, due to some wild counter. Then we learn that Kintoki's Valkyrie is indeed the 12th one, the final one we haven't seen in the series, and the power that is within her ruin connects to the age of the axe, which is exactly what we see when the volume commences, the evolution of Kintoki's divine weapon or battle axe, with some narration going over how the first time in human history, this is where humanity will surpass the gods, highlighting once again how much build up Kintoki is getting, which is absolutely wild. But now when it comes to the translations around Odin's arrival to the arena, the narration apparently claims that he is the supreme god of Valhalla, Midgard and Helheim, highlighting that his position in the Record of Ragnarok world is actually similar to Zeus, or maybe even above him. He's the supreme god of the gods realm, what Zeus is meant to be, Midgard of humanity's realm, and the underworld. Remember, these are just rough translations provided by some of the leakers. When we get the full chapter, or maybe when we get the anime, that will be like the canon translation, or when the Viz release eventually gets up to this in like 5 or so years. But wild stuff. Apart from that, Odin is apparently known with like 200 plus other names. So bro is without a doubt top tier god, potentially number one when it comes to aura or story surrounding him, which does make a lot of sense considering his real lore connecting back to the primordial god days, with apparent claims that this is the strongest god of war in Valhalla, which does put question marks around the 4 claims about being the strongest Norse god. So again, gonna have to wait for official and full translations, but everyone is very clearly fearful of Odin, highlighting that no one can win, no one can put up a fight against him and his spear, meaning it's very likely that no one is aware of his primordial god sword based on these translations we have so far. So that's definitely going to be a big surprise when that gets revealed later on. And on top of all of this, when he enters his transformation, apparently no god was actually aware that this was his final form, meaning no god in Valhalla, no human including Brunhilde and the others are aware of this transformation when it comes to Odin. Perhaps they have an understanding that he can transform and has some type of true form, but this is the first time everyone is actually seeing it. And we do see Odin talking some shit right after he enters his transformation, claiming that he wondered who his opponent would be and is surprised it was nothing more than Buddha's errand boy, but also takes note Brunhilde is quite sneaky, and the one she would choose to defeat him has to be incredibly strong. So Odin wants to see Kintoki's real and true power, highlighting that he probably has some crazy overconfidence when he enters this transformation, perhaps once again giving off some Aizen vibes. And now when it comes to the translations of the final moment in this chapter, Kintoki's hand is somewhat giving off a bright light, and then has some type of ruin within his own body or symbol that has Odin freaking out, where Kintoki reveals that he also inherited the will of Gollnir. So from my understanding, Gollnir was actually the scribe of the book Beelzebub got access to, which went over Odin's plan of resurrecting the primordial gods, meaning Kintoki and Odin are connected in some way, and Kintoki just outright says, if you resurrect the primordial gods, I don't know what you're planning to do, but every drop of blood in the veins of my body is telling me I have to stop ya. With the mysterious symbol emerging that connects Kintoki and Odin, what we previously learnt about in chapter 107 when Kintoki was revealed to be humanity's next fighter. So that's probably going to be how next month's chapter actually begins, fully explaining this connection. But it seems as though Kintoki is more than capable of defeating Odin, and these two could very well be the rank 1 and 2 when it comes to the strongest characters in the entire Ragnarok story. I will not be surprised if that ends up being the case based on this very wild introduction. So based on these leaks and subtle translations we've gotten so far, goated introduction to Ragnarok round 12, and I am insanely excited. Of course, there'll be new videos breaking down everything once we get the full chapters and the full translations, so stay tuned for that. Check out the video on 108 and this other Ragnarok fun video to watch. But that's it guys, peace.